Hi, Sarah.
Hey again, Louise.
How are ya?
Well, you know,
Sad.
this book, not that I ever expect any kind of cheerful chapters, but I don't know, today's
Have
chapters really hit me hard. Before we get started, we're reading The Girls Who Went Away by Ann Fessler. We are reading
Marge.
Marge
I'm gonna
first.
tell you right out of the gate that Marge, I have to tell you this part. She's from a small town in Kansas, 1,200 people, very small town. Listen to this. This new guy came to town to live with his uncle, and there were stories about him, but he had a brand new Camaro, and he was 19. And my boyfriend in high school had a Camaro. And that was the coolest thing ever. And I used to borrow it and I have a picture of it. So I'm gonna actually send that to you. But right away I was like, oh God, I could see like she's so innocent in a
Oh,
way.
I know. And just,
Mm, you know,
hmm
she liked him. She just had a crush. And then
But she didn't have any idea. Like,
no,
she was like, no, I can't do that. This seems frequent in these stories from this era of not really knowing what sex was or that it was happening and then realizing too late, like, wait a minute, I didn't want to do that.
she was literally laying there frozen once they got together and had sex, didn't
Hmm.
even know, that that's what it was going to be or that you get pregnant. So
Yeah,
much of this is education. It's so upsetting.
I know.
And so she gets pregnant and you know, right away it was all about how the town would look at her. I
And
mean,
also
because
just, the mother like, oh, we'll talk to dad and and she never had her own voice in any of it. There
never.
was just no the decisions were being made for her, not
It was
by her.
interesting. She said her mother married her dad 6 weeks after getting pregnant.
Right.
So her mom right away was like, "Oh, this is like she's too young for marriage, so this is something we'll solve." And obviously her mother went down that route, got married because she got pregnant. Another
Hmm.
woman who didn't have any choices. It's
Very, very common,
hmm
which talked about this in the previous chapters that we read
yeah,
about either you getting married or adoption seemed to be the.
yeah,
So they took her to, your typical home for unwed mothers and
yeah. Came to visit her every Sunday like it was nothing. Like took her out to eat and whatever. It was just like these nice little visits and just odd. And she bonded with a girl there. She had one girl
hmm
they usually, it seemed like someone would have a friend. So going through the same thing. And she wanted to, they would exercise. This was kind of funny. This is even there, they weren't given information. Okay. You're still having a baby. They're not given information about what's to come or how you have a baby, which is fascinating to me. And they're exercising thinking they could get their babies to come early because she wanted to get back to school so nobody would really notice.
right.
You
Which
see,
even though everyone in the town knew, right?
right.
It was a town of 1,200. They knew, and she knew they knew,
Yeah.
but
But if you start off the school year at the beginning, maybe they forget type of thing.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
which they didn't.
No, they did not. Well, then she has her
And
baby in October. And the thing that with her, she had a little boy, I believe, isn't that right? And
yes, and she didn't want to meet to see him. She knew it would be too painful.
yeah,
And then ultimately it caught up with her. And this
yeah.
is really common. She goes back to school and they're all they knew
Weird.
she'd had a baby and had sex, so then she was labeled a whore and
Yeah.
and all the boys, she had some very strange experiences and then she went to college and started drinking, which numbed her out.
Drinking and
It's
having
in
lots of
and
sex.
having lots of sex. It's interesting the parallels between how adoptees feel
I
and how the mothers feel.
I,
The same,
I thought that
all
too.
this shame and pain and anguish. She said
Numbing.
something that I really related to, which
Hmm.
because I put me, she said, I've lived most of my adult life disassociated from my feelings, just numb in order to exist. It's had a profound impact on my relationships with other people and big time trust issues. That was why she couldn't go to therapy
Right.
for a while
Right.
because she couldn't even trust a therapist.
No,
I mean,
I thought,
the long term damage is
yeah, it's massive. I was thinking, I put here Linda plus her boyfriend, I won't say his name. So my biological mom had a boyfriend before she died that he wanted to marry her, and she kept saying to him, this is 7 years after she relinquished me. I can't, I've done something horrible. You won't want me. All these things, which now he understands was me. But that was the whole, she said, that fueled my feelings of low self-esteem and low self-confidence for a lifetime, right?
For a lifetime.
Yeah. And no, it didn't help that like everyone treated her like that too at her home
I
and
mean,
small town. I can
ugh.
picture it.
Oh
I,
yeah. I'm, you know, it still goes on.
it does still go on. So then Yvonne.
And then we go to Yvonne, which was just a
Mhm.
just so this one really did me in.
Yeah. You wrote me that because I hadn't read and you had already finished. You're like, you cried several times. And this is awful too. She was 18, old enough to
And
be a parent.
old enough to be a parent. But you know, some context. Her parent, as you read through the chapter, you discover her mother was incredibly abusive to her, physically abusive,
Horribly.
and her father wasn't great. You know, calling her moron and
Yeah,
uh,
he liked
not
her, but like
protecting her
didn't protect
from her
her.
mother, and you know, which is it's 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 double abuse. It's parental abuse by
It
both of them.
is.
Him not protecting her
Yeah,
and calling her names. Yeah,
for sure.
did he like her? I don't know. Doesn't
Well, I don't
sound
know.
like
And
it.
the grandmother said something that she wanted to take her out of the home at one point. She
Mm-hmm.
remembered that, and she had reflected back on her childhood memories. Not to jump ahead, but the father was like, she can't leave our home because she's my child. But yeah, you don't do anything to protect this child.
Nothing.
And the
And
grandmother threatened the mother, I would take your baby because you abuse her so badly.
she
Horrible.
had the guy that got her pregnant, you know, was all gung ho, and he was like, "Let's." They were in college. He's like, "Let's," and he was a musician. "Let's
Yeah.
move to Wisconsin, back near the family. Let's do this together." And then he gets there, and his bandmates are like, "Dude, is it your kid? You sure?" Or like, "Pretend it's not," or whatever stuff that they said. And then her father, you know, threatened him, and
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and
And
then they
thought he was
took
a
her,
low life. Yeah, because he was in
and
a band. Yeah.
I mean, she had a just
Horrible.
terrible. Yeah, and the dad was like, "I'm not going to spend one dime on that bastard." You know,
No.
I mean, talk about almost like if you wanted to write a movie with
Yes.
terrible characters, his dad would, you would think, no, this is too much of a cliche. I don't
But
buy
it's
this character. He really was
he was. And
right
this the
a
sad thing about
villain.
this, yeah, villain. She was very bright because she goes on
Hmm.
later to get her doctorate and all these things. She's very bright. She had to go work in all these, he put in these factory jobs, these horrible jobs, and like I mean, she really had a future and could have figured this out, but nobody helped her.
No, in fact, we had this terrible social worker in
Oh
Catholic
my
social
gosh.
services, you know, who just kept chipping away at her.
Yeah.
And, you know, how do you think you could raise a child? Look at you. What do you have to offer a baby that what? And then
Ugh.
she even talked about her looks.
Yes. Say that part.
She said when she got a copy of her records after her son found her, there was a physical description in there that said I had sallow skin, dark circles under my eyes, thick lips, a snub nose, and I lumbered when I walked. The only nice thing she said to say about me was that I had wonderful, naturally arching eyebrows.
The heck.
And it was always like, what are you going to do? How are you going to support this kid? I mean, just wearing her down.
And she wanted to keep her baby, by the way. This is somebody who wanted to have her child. She just
Mhm.
couldn't figure it out. She didn't ever want adoption was
And it
never
took her
something.
months
Yeah.
to sign the adoption
Yes.
papers, and
Yeah.
they wore her down. I
They
mean,
did.
that's really all
The
the
weirdest
only.
part is she got her mom on board at one point, her abusive mom, who she didn't want to talk to or have any part of this because her mom would have to take daycare for the child.
And she was concerned that her mother would beat the
Yes.
child.
But she still wanted her baby and she was trying to figure out. And then the social worker did the whole money thing. So she called the social worker and said, I'm going to keep my baby. We're coming to get him, her, him. You're right,
Him.
him. And you now owe us ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching,
Right.
ka-ching. It's like, first of all, get a lawyer. That's not true, but they don't know.
Now, we have more
Right.
agency now. She
Right.
had no agency. She
Nothing.
was just, nobody was on her side. There was not one
No.
person on her side helping her.
And she thought
And
if
then
she
she,
could get
until
the mom to
she,
see her. Yeah.
till she got married.
Yeah.
And he was a champion and they went on to have kids
Yeah.
and she just lived with this grief so
Horrible.
for so many years. And
You know who else was a champion? She married this man that she had dated while she was pregnant, which is
mhm.
interesting. And thought, if I'm going to marry anybody, it's going to be him. He was quite a good guy. His parents got
Yes, his
letters and
parents.
notes from people saying she's a sinner, she's a bad person, and they ignored it and supported her.
Yep.
She didn't know that till much later. And I thought, you know what? If more people are like these people, we wouldn't be into this situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and here's what this I found quite shocking. I, I don't know why, but I did. She called up the social
Oh,
worker to try to get her baby. He hadn't been adopted yet, and the social worker was like, he's probably too old at this point. He's like 2 months old, and they thought maybe he was deaf. He was
yeah.
asking, and so then she's like, well, no one's probably going to want to adopt him, and Yvonne was like, I want my child. I'll take him. And the
Yeah.
social worker says, no, I don't care if he grows up as a ward of the state. You will
Yeah.
never get him back.
That surprised me too. That shocked me because it's cruel.
It's purposefully cruel. Like,
Yeah.
go
It's
out of
not
your way to be cruel, cruel.
right. It's not, we're trying to find a home for this baby. This is, you're punishing you because I'm this
Hmm.
Catholic social worker woman and you don't deserve, it's rather for him to grow up in this horrible situation than to have his mother. Who are these
And then
people?
even during like when she was going through labor and nobody was telling her
Oh
what
my
was going on
God.
and she was in such pain and because
Yeah.
they induced her labor,
Yeah.
um, they wouldn't, they're like, you shouldn't have gotten yours, if you hadn't done this in the first place, like
Wouldn't be in this situation.
just
Oh,
endless.
and let's say one more thing about this, because this is another thing if you haven't read this book or don't know about it. They tied her down. So
Yes,
she's
hands and
tied
legs,
down for
arms and legs.
hours through this, even after she gives birth and they drug her. She gets to wake up,
And
see
she
her
was
baby
vomiting
vomiting. They
and
didn't
they just put
care.
her in another room, like no,
Down the
no,
hall.
yeah.
I mean, it's really, she literally said the abuse of her childhood was the only reason she got through this abuse because she had already been abused. I mean, this is abuse.
Honestly,
Yep.
I wish there were class action lawsuits
Me too.
against in this case, this was Catholic
Yeah.
services, right?
Yeah.
This is just, an-
Horrific.
yeah, unbelievable. I mean, we could go on and on and on.
Yeah. We could.
She does, had more children. She told the daughters about the son. They were so welcoming and so gracious and happy and excited to have a brother. Her husband was really supportive.
Yeah. And her son found
Um,
her.
and she, after he found her, she went into such a deep depression over her shame and sadness and
Yeah.
unresolved grief. And, she
Even
really had a tough,
she
tough
did.
go, tough life.
And the very end, she says, about adoption. I think this is important. I've always thought from the instant I knew I was pregnant that he was innocent in all of this. This is about the boyfriend. He didn't choose, or the son. He didn't choose to be born and he didn't cause any pain. Actually, by tripping it loose, he's the reason I've been able to heal as much as I have. I've been very grateful for that. She just wanted everyone to know, like, he didn't cause any pain, her baby, her son. And, you know,
Mm.
I wonder, like, after reading this, are they still in reunion? I want to hear the next. I want to
I know.
know.
I'm guessing so.
I'm guessing so
I'm
too.
guessing so. Okay, well, next chapter, the family's fears. Uh, yeah, that's what we're
Chapter 5.
doing. Chapter 5 next week.
Yeah.
And we have Angela coming on. So see you in a minute.
See you in a minute.